And there we are. We are now streaming live on YouTube. Well, Tina, can we go ahead and get the ball rolling, so to speak?
Yep, we can call the meeting to order.
All right, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. This evening. And I guess if we want to go through roll call, we can't look around the table and figure out what order to do this in. And I'm just going to start, and then we'll sort of wing it from the rest of that. So Tracy Wascom, present.
Molly Monto, present. Linnea, you're muted.
Yes, but we cannot hear you, my dear.
Steve Hughes, present.
And Barron's present.
Oh, we lost Carol present.
Okay. And we'll give Linnea a moment to come back in and make sure her audio connects properly this time. Hopefully everybody's managing life reasonably okay at this moment, these moments, not just one in time, and is coping, I think, is probably the best way we might be able to put it all at this time.
Can I try?
You are.
Linnea Gustafson, present.
All right, outstanding. So we're all present and accounted for. So moving on with our agenda. Pardon me if I'm looking off to the side. I have a monitor here. It's not that I'm literally not trying to make eye contact with people. So we need to approve the agenda. However, Tina is requesting to make an addition to that agenda. So Tina, if you would like to at least put that forward before somebody can make a motion to add it.
Add the presentation to the City Commission for a discussion under new business. And maybe that's at the end of new business. I don't know where you'd like to have it.
I think that would be fine. So if we can get somebody to make a motion to.
I make a motion to add the item to the end of the new business.
I second.
Okay, so just for ease, because it's easier, I think, to be visual and try to raise hand in our participants thing. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're good. Looks like everybody is in favor, so no need to move forward. So we will move forward with that new agenda with the added item of the presentation to the City Commission and setting the date for that as the last item of new business. The next thing we need to do is approve our minutes from March. It's
January.
January. Wow, because we're supposed to. Really
That's wild.
So hopefully folks have had a chance to go back through your records and look at that and note any corrections, additions, or changes that might need to be made. Anybody see anything that wasn't correct? I'm taking everyone's silence as golden. So in that case, we can also then make a motion. I need somebody to make a motion to move forward.
Oh, wait, there's one correct. Oh, never mind. I'm lying. Yes, I make a motion to accept the minutes. Anybody? Okay.
Steve seconds. So with that, and then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Everybody is eyeing forward. And off we go. I'm looking currently in our participants, and I don't see that Sean has moved anyone in for public comment. Tina, I don't know if we've received any written information.
We did receive one.
Okay.
So I'll read it to everybody. It's from Avery Peterson. She's a student at Northern, and this is her public art. And I can always, are you taking minutes still then, Maureen?
Looks like it.
Yeah.
Looks like it.
This is being recorded as well, so.
Yeah. Oh, God. Nice. So I can also forward this to you, Maureen, this email.
Okay.
as well.
Thank you.
My name is Avery Peterson. I'm a junior at Northern Michigan University and grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I cannot stop thinking about the events unfolding in my hometown and across the country over the past few weeks. I've been reflecting on ways I can listen to people in my community and educate myself and even educate others. I was thinking about the effect of art and murals on cities, something I'm sure these departments are aware of, meaning us. I think it would be incredible to create a mural somewhere in Marquette highlighting equality in general and somehow honoring the lives lost to police brutality. I believe it would be a great way to peacefully show that Marquette supports diversity and inclusion. I was thinking it could center around the idea that our differences make us stronger and encouraging people to listen, educate, speak up, donate, etc. I was curious to see if this is a project that the city might be willing to put some funding towards. I was also wondering if you had any ideas for locations of my proposed mural. In regards to who would be involved, I'd like to talk to as many people as possible. I love art and I would love to design sketches for this project, but I also thinking having artists and others in our community get involved would be great. Please let me know if this is something the Public Art Commission would be interested in talking more about. And just to note that she did call me and I did explain that if she was in contact with a private property owner, that we would, offer resources and stuff, but she could go ahead and plan a mural with anywhere in Marquette. That there was nothing prohibiting her to doing it not on city property.
Okay, so we can obviously take that into consideration. If it's something that specifically we want to address, we could definitely route it. I don't know if we can then if we want to discuss that now, we'd have to like re-amend our agenda for today, or if it's something that we would like to potentially consider for the agenda of our next meeting. That's absolutely something that we could move forward with that, because I do think it may bear having a sort of legitimate discussion on the focus of future RFPs that we have as part of the Public Art Commission.
Move it to next meeting.
Okay, so that's something that as we're looking to the next agenda, Tina, I think that would be worth at least us speaking more at length on about how that might impact what we choose to do as part of whether it's literally the next RFP or as future RFPs.
And identifying community partners, I think.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. So item 5 is the vice chair report. That's me. I don't have a huge report because we haven't been meeting. There hasn't been a lot going on. Everybody's been previously navigating the impacts of COVID and how that affects them both on both a macro and micro scale. And subsequently, I think it's fair to say that everybody's been navigating the current sort of cultural schism and kind of impact of everything that's happened in terms of both the situation going on in Minneapolis and also other things that have sort of exposed the more blatantly for all of us, the kind of systemic, both embedded and perhaps sometimes less visible racism that's going on in our country. And while we haven't had to make or chosen to make a public statement as the Public Art Commission, and whether or not we choose to do that, I suppose also could be an item of discussion. There's one thing that I did want to remind all of us as we're looking forward. That is part of our public art policy for the city, which established us, as well as the goals for public art in Marquette, that I do think is worth remembering at this time. That one of the parts of our purpose for why we were established as a public art commission was to add warmth, dignity, beauty, and accessibility to spaces accessible to the public and expand the experience and participation of citizens with the arts. And that in fulfilling that, there are possibilities, whether it is something like the project that Avery Peterson mentioned, or something else that might let us speak to ensuring that the breadth of experience, the breadth of history, the breadth of our cultural population in the city of Marquette is both represented within the art that is considered public art in Marquette, and also fosters making Marquette and continuing to ensure that Marquette is the most sort of generous, kind, compassionate, just place that we can be. As part of our goals, it's also, I want to remind everyone that we had sort of stated that our goals as part of that process was to integrate public art into all aspects of the community and make art openly available to all citizens, educate the public about local history, culture, and values through public art, and highlight the efforts of local artists, as well as featuring works of regionally, nationally, and internationally notable artists in this process. That we ensure that whatever we do and that whatever we promote, that we ensure that it is accessible to all, which includes also making sure that people can physically get to the work that we help to foster in the work, that what we strive to put forward from this point on ensures that Marquette's history and the varying facets of its history are celebrated, and one is not sort of superimposed or given priority over another history, and that we make sure that the artists who we bring in or that we celebrate that are local are treated respectfully and fairly, both in terms of our interpersonal reactions, that we also ensure that they are paid an equitable wage for what it is that they do. So that's kind of my report, which isn't much of an actual report. It's just more of, I think, hopefully something to remind us as we move forward, a kind of guiding principle or set of guiding principles that we keep top of mind in the face of not just the sort of monthly kind of bureaucratic stuff that we do, but also some of the broader, higher minded ideals that we strive, I think, to ensure we fulfill as part of our obligations to both the city, the community, and the world at large. So that's what I've got for that. So with that bit underway, I suppose it's the manager report. So Tina, that's you.
I'm so glad it's being recorded because I want to hear everything that you said again. It's really.
Thanks. I couldn't do it again on the fly. That was just totally like going. So that's just, but it's from the heart, and it's from a place of genuineness.
So we last met in January. From that time, we had the art awards that were really successful this year. Almost 200 people attended. So happy with it. February, I was sick for a week, so we didn't have our meeting. And then the week that it was rescheduled for, March 18th, we shut our doors on this. Actually, I think, I don't know if it was that Monday or Friday that we shut our doors, but we couldn't meet. So since then, everything closed down, and I think there was an adjustment, like we all had to get readjusted to what's happening, how do we function. We were all sent home, and staff, Tristan Luma, Taylor Cooley, and myself were permitted to continue to work. Not all city workers, everyone was paid, but not everyone was continuing to work from home. City management felt that the staff with the Marquette 365 community calendar, it was really important that we kept an online connection with the community. So we really changed everything to focusing on supporting the community and offering our stakeholders a virtual connection. So I'll let you kind of tell you a little bit about what we've done and where we're going. So we assisted organizations and individuals. A lot of those groups are people that normally meet here, nonprofits, guilds, clubs, but also people that lost revenue to cancellation of local festivals. Specifically, one of our biggest partners, which is Lake Superior Art Association, who canceled Art on the Rocks, which is their primary fundraiser. And how we assisted them, we assisted with grant writing. We assisted with developing a resource listing with state and national resources, which included National Artist Relief Fund, the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs Relief Fund. We helped different groups write their relief fund requests We helped the Arts Alliance. We actually wrote for them a request to the Herbanen Foundation, Relief Fund. We wrote our own grants, but we also focused on getting people online, helping people that didn't know how to do that to do that. We right away made a subcategory in our community calendar to include streaming online events. And there was a lot of hand holding that went through that, but I think it's becoming, people are noticing it. It took a while to promote it, but it is getting more robust. That was one. We also, of our normal programming, we're thinking about, what can we continue, especially with senior arts, because that's one of our biggest programs is senior arts. We moved our senior dancing online. We have about 15 to 20 people that do dancing from their living rooms, ages 60 plus weekly, which is pretty cool, given that we're really the senior center is really trying to bring technology to our seniors, especially the ones that don't have a lot of online connection. So that's been improving. We also moved our senior theater experience online. They started a podcast called the Senior Theater Experience Podcast, and it's for students from that program that wrote monologues or have been doing writing original works. And those links can be found on our Facebook. Actually, I'll make a point to send everybody those links. That's also expanded to some of the nursing homes. One of our activities directors, I believe maybe it's Brookridge, Jamie Weeder, who is the UP Wolfhead Theater director, volunteers started collecting stories from seniors, whatever they wanted to talk about, if it was the experience of the pandemic or anything, and those are also on the podcast. So that's just a way also of engaging more community members. Let's see what else. Then planning the reopening with the library. It's kind of difficult because the city's reopening plan is different from the library's reopening plan. Right now, the library is legally allowed to reopen, but librarians wanted to move very slow. A lot of the general public comes here, and they just really wanted to make sure all their processes were in place before they just open the doors. So the library is probably not going to open in general to the public, even if it's limited people, till mid-July. Right now, they're focusing on curbside. And really trying to get their curbside service down, so no one has to come into the library to check out a book. And the gallery spaces in a library, Huron Mountain primarily, is the quarantine area for those books that are left there for so many days, over I think maybe 3 to 5 days. Soon they're going to be taking appointments for mostly seniors first for computer usage, and then they'll figure out early July how many people they're comfortable with letting into the library. There'll be librarians at the doors allowing people to come in. So all of that affects us. They will not be having any art exhibits at the library. They just don't feel it's fair to the artists that can't have a reception. The Huron Mountain Gallery is obviously going to be used probably for a year for quarantining materials. So that all affects us. Right now, our exhibits, June's canceled immediately. July and August are considering. They are thinking about artists are thinking about doing virtual exhibits or rescheduling to the following year, which will probably be 2022, because we already have people 2021 scheduled. That's Lake Superior Art Association is working on that. We can take appointments, not actually even yet. We're still Zooming all of our meetings. Soon we'll take in-person by appointment only. We are not going to open up our studios, our workshop spaces. Most of our user groups are seniors, and we just don't feel comfortable. And seniors meaning really 55 plus. So not all, 70s and 80s, but we just still feel that doing workshops down here, we're not comfortable with it yet. So our focuses will not be focused on programming. We are looking at some virtual programs with seniors though. September, we'll just take it month to month, might be different. Also, we are other things that we're working on since we don't have the public coming in and out. We have more time to work on other projects. So rebranding community services, which we're a part of, we're doing a whole new rebranding. Expanding the 365 community calendar to be an arts and culture resource website that includes a calendar. Working on a funding for artist directory that's UP wide with the UP Arts and Culture Alliance. Working for also including in that calendar a blog that would include articles, news stories, features on the arts and different things people are doing. It could be press releases, but we're very interested in articles of interesting things that are happening in our community or even nationally. We're also putting in a community art wall on the Marquette 365 site. I did consult with Tracy about making sure that people understood that we wouldn't have copyright to the art that was posted. But we were looking at a lot of communities, and community art walls are becoming a popular way to share like what you knit or what you're working on or what anything that you made, especially during the pandemic. And maybe it'll continue after that. We're also working on, and I know this is long, but it's been a while, so I apologize. We're also working with the library and the Poet Circle on the Marquette Memory Box, which some of you might have already seen. It'll be more formally announced end of this week or next week. But the Marquette Memory Box kind of came out of the cancellation of Art Week. We were going to do a Words on 3rd Street with the Poet Circle and collect stories that honored women in history. And we thought, okay, that's all canceled. Let's still collect stories. Maybe it's more about what people have been through or how they have been creatively, what work they've created during this time. So we're calling it the Memory Box, also connecting with Northern, that the archives that are collecting the response to the pandemic. This is helping them potentially collect the creative's response to the pandemic, all voluntary. Literary is being collected by the library. Performance, we will have a YouTube channel, and then the visual art is being collected on the community art wall. And these links will be made available to people. And obviously, if NMU Archives wants to reach out to these people to connect with them regarding collection of the actual material piece, they can do that.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Is there anything, I mean, I know the focus of Memory Box was probably initially tied to COVID, but given our current environment, not saying it explicitly has to sort of incorporate the discussions that are often going now, people's experiences and the work that they're making in response to police brutality and violence, but I think it's at least worth letting people know that if that's something that group is willing to have those stories shared as well, that people recognize that if that is a venue where it can happen, if that's part of the stories that people are sort of experiencing right now and telling right now, that might be worth also archiving as part of that project.
Absolutely. And that was a discussion that was had. I think I'm just so used to saying in response to the pandemic.
Okay.
But actually, Andrea, we were thinking about prompts and words and what's been happening throughout, the world and in Minneapolis. Some of the word that changed our focus with words. Okay. It became justice, kindness, safety. Other words came up for prompts. So that will now be incorporated into that memory box. So it is expanded. Yes, absolutely. And I'll just make a point that when that press release goes out to make sure it feels broad to people. Art Week was canceled, and it was such a bummer because it was the biggest yet. In place of it, though, we were going to do some programming. We're working with City Band to do some social distance concerts at Presque Isle and at the Marquette Commons, where people could be in their cars around the parking lots, and they'll be spaced in the center common space. Working with Hiawatha to do the same. And working with the Marquette makers, some people from the Marquette Artists Collective and others that are interested in doing a community art project. I'm going to talk with the Arts and Culture Committee if all of you want to weigh in on at some point as well. But the idea is to have something people can create, and if we could hire an artist to put that together, if it's a quilt, and then display it somewhere. something that we can all share in, that we could have displayed at the end of the summer that people could walk by and see. But definitely some of the ideas that were thrown around were making something, bringing it to have someone, I was thinking of someone like Rachel May or someone, you know, with the even paper being sewn, something being sewn together. That was what has been mentioned so far. We still have to meet with those different people that are interested to see what their other ideas are. And in the fall, kind of assume this is going to continue. So continuing outreach, continuing to develop 365, grant assistance. I don't know how many of you are familiar. Hopefully you got a survey in the mail or in your email, but the Masonic is transforming to a nonprofit. They've applied. They're going to be the Masonic Arts Theater Innovation Center. They have a board of directors they have put together, and they want the Masonic to transition to a maker space, performance space, artist studios. They have a big vision. So we have been connecting them with different grant sources and board members. Ben Franklin's closing. So all these conversations are being had. It's a very interesting time. The city TV channel, we're looking in the fall about having ongoing programming on the TV channel if it's concerts, so people don't have to have a computer to enjoy performing arts. Again, more technology training to seniors, and then working on next year's projects, which are Cultural Trail, Public Art, Art Week in June, which now we've written a grant for $14,000 to the Michigan Council for Arts to fund Art Week. So that would really change Art Week. We really want it to be a big celebration and probably include the art awards within Art Week in June instead of pushing it to January. So yeah, that's a lot, and I'm going to stop there. There's a couple other things, but it can wait till next time. Any questions for me about any of that?
Okay, so from there, we are on to item 7, which is the Friends of Marquette Public Art Commission report. So Emily, I'm guessing there might not be much to report, but I'll get you to weigh in nonetheless.
We haven't met since then.
No, and Emily left our Friends of. It's me and Nina Icker right now. So if you know people that would like to join the Friends of, but we have not met. I think once there's a public art project in place, and also once we decide on the logo tonight, that's going to be a nice way to kind of kick off the Friends of group again. So looking forward to that, but nothing to report.
Okay. So with that, I suppose we are on to new business. And the first piece of that is actually the MPAC and Friends logo. I don't know if, oh, I can. All right. So hopefully, can y'all see my screen over there?
Yeah.
A whole big list of an agenda.
Yeah.
Is that visible?
Yep.
Okay. So from that, this is the presentation that like Emily and I actually with Forrest, like we did this all sort of remotely, like on the front end of COVID too. I mean, we had met, Emily, Tina and myself had met with Mike Forrester down in kind of Tina's area at the library and had a discussion to try to provide some guidance to Mike as he set to beginning the process of branding for both the Public Art Commission and the Friends of the Marquette Public Art Commission. We met with Forrester via phone. Emily and I were sort of sitting apart, like looking at a laptop and trying to be good in the face of everything that had started to unfold in March. And he sort of talked us through this presentation of his work, which we couldn't, of course, have a real discussion about this with this commission because we need to do it in person, but you got this information forwarded to you. At least I'm pretty sure we passed that on.
Yeah, I feel like there was a conversation about it.
But just to sort of give you a sense of, you know, he was looking towards a variety of inspirations in this process, thinking about how do you provide a branding demarcation for the Marquette Public Art Commission that would speak to the goals of what we were established for. And in doing that, you know, it's, as a reminder, we were thinking about the fact that this has got to live across a variety of different venues. It needs to be able to be a Facebook or Instagram, should we do Twitter as well, sort of location. It needs to be able to have not just a social media presence, but potentially a website presence too. It needs to be able to exist on letterhead. It needs to be able to exist potentially on t-shirts or other fundraising materials, right? It has to serve a lot of different purposes. And so there were three versions that he ultimately presented to us. This was the first one in his presentation. And in sort of the bottom there, you can see it talks about where his inspirations came from. Simple shapes for lots of variety of expression, geometric, futuristic, stand among a local representation. Nobody in town currently really has anything that looks like this, right? It's not trying to replicate existing styles or ideologies of what it means to live in Marquette, i.e. there's no trees, right? There's no trees, there's no lakes, there's no anything that sort of says explicitly outdoor, though the color palette clearly has a reference back, right? To sort of definitely some of the hues that exist in our area. From there, he sort of showed the different kind of iterations of how that might be able to exist, from a horizontal version, the kind of blocked version with a variety of different color palettes, what that might look like on sort of a letterhead, business card, or mailing environment, as well as how that could function out on Facebook, and our ability in particular to sort of drop that down on existing artwork that we were trying to feature or spotlight from our collection, and not have it dominate that, but still be clearly identifiable that this is, right, part of the Marquette Art and Public Places, which is sort of overseen by the Marquette Public Art Commission. So another version that he did was this one. Again, he talked about sort of what sort of drew this one, conversations about a framed piece, and eye kind of reading outward, the idea of leaves. So again, connecting back to nature, but also this idea of seeing. He also touched on some challenges with using this one, that while the color can vary, to do the inverse, you'd have to have a container, sort of a boundary around this design. So it's a little less immediately fluid in terms of how it's used. These were the kind of, again, the iterations that he showed us for sort of color. This is how that might look in terms of letterhead. This is how it would exist. And there you can see that kind of container around the design, as well as here, it needs that extra sort of block so it doesn't get lost in a visual sort of just cacophony of everything that happens in social media. This was the third version that he presented. Again, kind of has that kind of fat line quality that Forrester is very sort of fond of. Sort of simple shapes, abstract quality, but clearly more directly sort of inspired by our locality in terms of the shapes used. Again, here is sort of what it looks like as it's translated both in color and black and white as well. There's the letterhead version, how it kind of scales up. And this is, again, he also kind of puts that boundary around it in the kind of sort of, here's my profile picture of the Public Art Commission and how that might drop down onto a given image. So this is what we're looking at, folks, currently in terms of what has been sort of presented to us. And I'm trying to make my, give me a second here. I'm trying to I can see everybody's faces again on everybody's kind of screen on that. This is kind of where we need to at least hopefully spend a little bit of time kind of weighing in on our initial observations. If there's ones that folks are feeling more strongly drawn or attuned to. And once we sort of kind of weigh in that way, if there's also any changes or modifications that we might like Forrester to make so that we can kind of get this right done, like off the docket, right? Like just going to move forward and get something resolved. I'm going to weigh in late because I don't want my position as vice chair to sort of inadvertently weigh anything. So whoever wants to kick in their 2 cents, start kicking. Emily, I saw a
Well,
hand raised, so go.
I will. I would vote for number 1.
All right, so let's just do it this way. So this is 1,
Yes.
2, 3, just so that we're clear, right? Okay.
So I feel like number 1 translates to sort of myriad places very easily. It's very recognizable. Number 2, to me, it looks like it should be either in healthcare or wealth management, or it could be on some of the backgrounds. It looked like a Target, which I think is a really bad for us to have as our logo. And while number 3 speaks to the area, and it's I don't think it's as effective as number 1, and I don't think it's as contemporary as number 1, and I don't think it translates with the ease that number 1 does. Those are just my 2 cents.
Okay.
I'm exactly with you, Emily. I think the first one, it just really catches my eye. It just really pops. And I think especially, like you said, in the variety of different contexts, I feel like it really stands out. And it's, I like the stylized letters, but then at the same time, it's still pretty easily recognizable. Also not really a fan of number 2 at all. And I like the third one. I think it does channel what's unique to our locale, but at the same time, I think that in that sense, it isn't necessarily unique to the Public Art Commission, right? That almost seems like it could be used for, a variety of different purposes. So definitely a fan of number 1 as well.
Okay. Meg, go ahead.
All right. I do like number 3 the best. I like that one the best. But what I don't like number 2 at all. But I'm okay with number 1. What I do like about number 1 is that you have MPAC present at all times, where that's not present in number 3. So, but I do feel that I do like the landscape part of it for the area.
Okay, great. Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, I like number 1. That was straight away my favorite. I do feel like it was more contemporary, and the number 3 was sort of safe, and then it could be applied to so many different things. I'm not crazy about, though, the text next to it, at least in terms of how that rag is so big. So I think there needs to be some sort of adjustment there made. I think it works better in the third one, being on 3 lines rather than 4 lines. So I don't know how that shakes out. But the other thing I might point out is that there is only one diagonal really in the letter blocking in the top of that M. And I wonder if there's a way to do that in a square format. I don't know. Or if there's a way to find another diagonal somehow.
All right, I'm jotting notes here so that we can share this with Forrester, depending on how things sort of play out. Maureen, go ahead while I finish up my notes.
Okay, I like number 1. I like that it does identify MPAC. And number 2, not a fan. I also agree it looks something like healthcare to me. And I see enough of that on a day-to-day basis. So number 3 was okay to me, but I just feel that number 1, it just identifies us more readily. So that's my vote.
Okay, and at the tail end here, I just kind of want to say, I basically want to say like pretty much ditto to all those, because when Emily and I sat down with Forrester, thinking about the broad spectrum of applications that would have to happen, the uniqueness of identifying us in a way that is not currently apparent, number 1 is the one that stuck. My second choice would be the third one, the one that does have that geographic kind of landscape affiliation to it. And yeah, I appreciate that he gave us a broad set of options with the second choice, but I also just kind of looked at that as, yeah, no, like that is not the Public Art Commission that I want to be visually identified with, if that is our like visual embodiment of what our goals are. I think there's some really great observations. I think Steve I absolutely agree with you about that rag edge. I think Emily and I kind of brought up that there was something still not quite right about that typography at the time. And I think you nailed what it is, that just that gap. I don't think we need to have MPAC and then have MPAC vertically reiterated again. It becomes redundant. So sort of blocking that down in a way where it doesn't sort of create quite such an irregular edge would be good. And I did make a note as we move forward to see if there's potentially a way to have some other kind of diagonal, right, show up there. Even I suppose it's possible he could address it in the contour. That's that green contour along the back of that, like just to drop that down to follow the contour of the M would at least make that diagonal. Maybe that would sort of integrate it so it's not just block, 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 beak, one little, you know, sort of shape like this there, but we can sort of pass it on to Forrester and say, all right, we've made some progress. Let's see if there's some ways where maybe that could be done. So,
or there's a way.
I'm dislodging a cat. So I realize this is not like good official stuff on YouTube, but I'm got a cat being a jerk. Yeah.
Maybe there's a way to take that diagonal and use it on the C, turn it on its side.
Oh, maybe. Sure.
Into it that way. And so it repeats potentially that way.
So,
but
that's his job to figure out.
Right.
Let Forrester sort of like weave his Forrester magic. Emily, you're making a furrow and a thinking face. Turn your audio on and share your furrowy thinky face.
I'm not quite sure. I was, maybe thinking more absence within some of the other letters might balance that out, but I'm not the designer. Just like another void or something here or there might create a little bit of continuity between the letters.
So I can pass both of those possibilities on. Do you folks feel like we've, in that weighing in, made sort of a sufficient enough vote to move forward? I mean, I kind of jotted things down. I think, Maureen, you probably did. So, Emily?
Yeah, I just have one more thing. How does everybody feel okay about this color palette?
All right, so I'm going to go back.
Nobody mentioned it at all, so I just want to make sure, it is sort of the most pastel-y in a way, or I don't know if that's a word I should use here.
When you look at the city,
not teaching, yeah, I'm like, Lene?
When you look at the city crest, which is actually, if you have it on like the waffle view of everyone, the third one was like the same colors as the city crest logo. So I can see where that played in. I don't know. I did like.
And he was thinking about that. Like he did look. Like that was something he mentioned in that meeting. So would we like to see some other potential? I mean, he did give us some options. Pardon me, while I scroll back here.
I think that one is super flexible in terms of color, and I would almost say it could be anything. You could put a pattern in there because the blocks are so clear.
So you don't think we're tied to these, like this robin's egg blue sort of slate blue? You don't think that the color is interesting?
I don't feel like it needs to be.
Okay.
I don't mind it.
Yeah. No, I don't either. I think, some of the combinations work better than others. For example, I think the middle or the slate as the ground is better than that one.
This is a bit
that feels a little bit so I mean, I think too so as long as the color is fine with everyone, I'm fine with it. I keep trying to move the screen.
That we have both those of us now potentially, well, not potentially, who are involved in this, as well as looking towards the future, that this is not the be all end all immutable, irrevocably fixed color palette for this logo, right? That there is that flexibility to say that it's the shape that's the most important, the relationships between the shapes that's the most important, and we can address that or change that depending on the use or the applicability, or even, I suppose, as we're putting it onto social media, if we want to make sure that it doesn't contradict or overwhelm the work that we're trying to promote.
Another thing I noticed too is that it looks like the M is skinnier than the other letters, and possibly the A too. Like P and C look a lot wider.
Then that may be something to address optically, because that's totally I think it's that's a but
like the optical
straight on part.
Yeah.
seems.
Yeah, it's doing that fun depth perception thing. Okay, are we good to sort of truck on to new business part B? Sweet, off we go. So at this point, there should be a kind of semicolon because we have both officer appointments and we also still have a vacancy to fill in terms of another Public Art Commission seat to fill. But officer appointments are part of that. Christine Granger, her term, of course, ended in December. And we met once in January. And then, of course, we've had our COVID gap. And so as the vice chair, I've been kind of acting as our
Acting chair.
our pro tem, right? Sort of real chair in the meantime. But we do need to address the chair of the committee and confirm or reassign as desired our secretarial position. So if Maureen does not want to continue to have to dutifully write all of the time so that she can more actively participate, we didn't want to presume that that was a role that Maureen wanted to just keep doing ad nauseum in that way. So I suppose our first bit is looking for nominations for chair.
I'll nominate you, Tracy.
That was like a total, I just opened that door, didn't I? Just opened the door and should have just walked through right then.
I mean, you're doing a great job as pro tem. So I mean,
I am willing to step in. Of course, that does mean that somebody's got to step into vice chair. But I am willing.
I nominate Emily for that one.
Okay. So
I'll do that.
Okay.
I was thinking both of
So
those.
I suppose to do this in some measure of officiously Robert's rules driven protocol. So Emily has made a motion, I suppose, to nominate me. I don't know if we technically need to second that. I don't know if that's Robert-y secondable.
I can.
It looks like Hughes has just seconded that. All those who are in favor of foisting me into the chair position, there's lots of it. I will not deny. Okay, so that's sort of a done deal. And then I believe Stephen Hughes has made a nomination to Emily. However, we also need to ensure, are there any other nominations that we would like or that someone would like to put forward? I'm seeing no faces moving, no hands raised, nothing happening. Okay, so I think we probably need a second on that nomination. Just
I'll second it.
Renee is seconding. All those in favor of Emily taking on the role of vice chair? There was no nays and no abstains possible. Okay, and so then Maureen, we're not going to obviously out you from your position, but so I guess the question is, do you want to continue in your role as secretary for the commission, or would you like a break from this job?
I don't mind doing the secretary portion of this. So unless there's somebody else who wants to, I will keep it if everyone is okay with that.
Is anybody interested in stepping into that position that Maureen has so dutifully and beautifully filled?
Tina's laughing on mute.
I think we are good to, and so in this case, we will, since it's not about excising.
Go, Maureen.
Thank you, Maureen, for taking on what is arguably the least sexy role in terms of officers. Yes, let's say I think that definitely deserves Emily. Okay, so moving on. So Tina, I'm gonna sort of leave part of this to you to introduce kind of the rationale of the Artsopolis public art module. Go ahead.
You mentioned the empty seat. I didn't know if
that's
we wanted to
the
discuss
tail.
that.
We're gonna do that at
part.
Yeah,
okay.
That'll be F. We'll get to that at the end.
Okay.
Of things. Yeah, we'll get that before we're done. So Tina, if you'd like to kind of briefly detail kind of the merits and the sort of insights into why you think Artsopolis is something that we need to pursue, just so it is on public record, and then we can have that broader discussion.
Okay, so, it came from this development of all during this COVID time and the kind of how do we become essential? And staff's talked about developing our link on the city website for a long time. But, to get to the city website, to get to arts and culture, it's difficult. And the event calendar is just a catalyst for people to come to that website and check it out. So the event calendar really draws people. The thing with Artsopolis, they are a non-profit organization. You know what, that might have just changed recently, but mostly what they do is regional arts alliances, and that's how they started out, being a resource for alliances, artist associations, state associations, and that's how they developed their software. And so ever since the event calendar started with the chamber, I had my eye on all these other modules that come with this software platform that you can buy. And that's what kind of I am advocating for. So we are doing the blog option, which is free, which allows us to post press releases and articles. We are working with the Alliance. They would actually host and purchase the module for their website for Art Directory, but we would buy in, so it's available on our website as well. And that would be a directory across the UPs that would drive people to the site. And their public art module, it's all there. We talked about developing it on the website for the city's website. But that means figuring out, we were going to do a very simplified version, just having pictures of our pieces. But this is a little bit more complicated than what staff could design. It's interactive. You could upload videos to it. It's got the map connection. I know that Tracy's explored it at length, and there's different things that she likes about it as well. And all of our visitors to the UP that are looking for events would see it front and center on the main page of 365. So I'd like for this group to consider this for a place for our public art inventory that we've paid for. We have images, and it would be nice to say, here it is, and to present it to the community.
Can you remind us also what the budget for that buy-in would be?
$2,500. And then right now the city is paying $1,400 an annual fee for Artsopolis to maintain, make changes, update the event calendar. It would probably go up a little bit. So there might be like $100 that would come out of our budget after a year's time to keep the public art directory maintained as well. But $2,500 to design and develop that first year. And
then after that, it wouldn't be another 25. It would be a sort of a nominal renewal.
Yep.
After that point.
Just for maintenance. Mm-hmm.
So I did, Tina had sent, just to prime us a little bit, some links to other cities where this is sort of being used, just so you can get a sense of just sort of what can be searched, styles of work, medium, if it's big enough in an area like this one, in for instance.
I think that might be an arts directory that you're looking at.
Well, but that's the links that that you had sent. So I don't know if that's exactly what they're using. From here, you get a sense of, right, there's the Tallahassee Arts Guide, and then there's Indy, and then there's Bainbridge. So that ability to sort of not only look by name description, the kind of art we could put, or I suppose with others potentially, allow for different videos that could be put online. If it could include work that is both the Marquette art and public places, the works that we are specifically accountable and responsible for, but also those public art pieces that are not, like Lene, all that work that you did, like here's the work that actually is city owned, but here's stuff that sits on private property. We could still link to those works. and make them available. It also would include the possibility of those sites. For example, I can't remember which church it was that says, why don't we know about certain historic buildings within the city that also might be able to link those things as well, sort of bridging those connections between the Marquette Art and Public Places, our collection, as well as existing sort of critical cultural visual objects that exist in our community. So folks, I think we're into Emily, you've unmuted, so I'm gonna.
So I'm
you
guessing that
first.
this is the thing that's going to be the public facing thing as far as inventory would go, and not the private facing thing. And I'm guessing there's a sort of mutability in how we present this. In some of the links that you sent, I looked through and it only had like the artist's faces first, and I thought that was a really terrible way of approaching it. I thought it should be we're celebrating the artwork. Obviously the makers are important in that, but it felt weird. So I would say, you know, if we're going to use it in a way that, you know, is thoughtful and meaningful. But also we had talked in the past about creating or implementing some sort of like artwork archive in order to inventory and keep things sort of on the back end straight. This is not that, right? So, okay. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. I think it has a lot of potential, although obviously you need to play around with it a lot more to figure out what the kinks are. And would staff be the people that would upload information, or who would be the point person?
Subcommittee, like we did with the design effort, and work with Artsopolis to make sure that they, you know, it's utilized the way you want it. I mean, because they can design it to a certain extent. So it might be nice to create a subcommittee that would work with staff and Artsopolis.
Well, if I'm hearing Emily right, though, I think the question is just like not just implementing it initially, but like subsequent maintenance, subsequent additions.
Correct.
Like that is it going to be? Yeah, no, it's as we get new work that comes in or as new work becomes revealed, like if people who have private artwork or on private property that we somehow missed, like because they hid it behind a tree. I don't know. You know, is it going to be, would we have to reach out to Artsopolis to have that uploaded, or what kind of administrative capabilities are we going to have, and who's the we that's going to deal with that administration?
So staff here at the Art Center would, and maybe we do it every, you know, twice a year, we update it. I think they have like a $50 an hour staff fee, and, you know, they're very good about not overcharging. If they only do 15 minutes of work, they often don't charge. So they're really good about updating things and working with us. So we would figure out a schedule so we could update the inventory as needed.
So other folks, Christina, you've unmuted now, so I'm looking for unmute, so go.
Right. So I do really like the map feature. I think that's really neat. I would agree, Emily, to your point about the art versus the artists. I think if the focus of this is to have it on the 365 page, which I think is awesome, you know, I love that will give it high visibility. I like that it would showcase, you know, the artwork, and I think that would invite people to kind of get intrigued and click into that. And then of course you can learn more about the artist, but I like it as kind of the directory for, you know, the artwork itself. And I think that between that and then the map, I think it can really kind of pull together a cohesive arts identity within the community. I like that it's, you know, I think, Tina, you had mentioned that if folks are, you know, visiting and looking for things going on, this is kind of right in their face then, but I think it's also great for, you know, the community, all of us who are here already, right? So I really am a fan of the map feature. I will say I had some issues on my computer getting any of those links to kind of respond properly. I don't know, I'm on a Surface Pro. I don't know if that was just my computer misbehaving or what. But that was kind of the only thing I think that stood out to me.
And that's like very problematic, right?
Yeah, I don't know
get the links to work.
Had that issue, but it just wasn't responsive really to the device I'm on. But Might have just been me.
Steve, Lene, Maureen.
I think it's great that it would be connected to the calendar page, and it makes sense to use that. I get the idea that doing this all in-house would be hard to do, and I would not want to sacrifice that map option. I think that's exactly what we need. And as far as like the portraits of the people, I mean, Tracy, if you scroll down, when it's showing the examples of the public art ones, they show the artwork. So I don't think that's really a big issue right now. It's putting the art front and center.
Yeah, so we're gonna-
There's got to be a way to do that pretty easily.
Sorry.
The Bainbridge example maybe had the art pieces. I forget, but I think one of them did.
Yeah, some of the other links did.
I might have mixed up some of the art directory examples. That's what I'm thinking I did then.
Try not to click on anything lest it go awry. So other weigh-ins, Lene?
I liked it. I really liked the map also. Are we going to continue to like classify things as like city owned or private public? Would we do that on the map? Would we color code it? I don't know. Or is it just going to be a bunch of like they have red dots? I feel like the city owned stuff might get lost in with the private that otherwise, but if that's what you all want, that's fine too.
I know that, I mean, again, I think this would be part of the like the categories that get established, right, and demarcated. And also potentially a part of the larger discussion is, and this might come down to also how this is, well, we're paying for a portion of this, like, is this serving just our needs, or is this serving like bigger city needs and bigger community needs at the same time?
Well,
The idea that there's a collection sort of category, I think, is something that's worth noting, so that we could say like all public art, or you could have the Marquette Art and Public Places collection. You could have privately owned work. So I think that way, even if folks wanted to sort of toggle between that, they potentially could have that opportunity. And I imagine that just must be a database field when you upload it, that you just toggle a thing and then you can sort of set that out. So if you're like, I only want to see the stuff that the city of Marquette owns, boom, right? You could extract all of those other pips out of the map.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, is that if it's like any other database, you can add specific fields. So the thing in the beginning, like I mentioned, thoughtfully setting it up, right? It's like, how are people going to use this database, and what information needs, or what categories do we need to create that are most useful to the people, researchers, tourists, visitors, townspeople? How will they search differently, and what might those categories be? Because you want it to be as useful of a resource as you can, right? And so I think that can be easily addressed from the start.
Yeah, and that might be one where I think that ad hoc committee would be really valuable, to have people who like that's their sort of goal, is to sit down and think about, who are the various individuals who might use this map, what are the different reasons that they might be there, and how do we ensure that those people, whether it's parents up here on vacation, people up here on vacation, whether it's teachers, right, and how they might think about utilizing this resource, or other artists, would be good. Christina?
Yep, I feel like we have a lot of flexibility in those categories too, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be tied to a particular static piece of work. I understand we have, the catalog and the inventory, but I think you could even expand it to galleries, studios, even if there are businesses that are, supporters of the arts and things like that, and kind of just denote it in a different color or category. But I think that would be nice to pull it all together that way.
So good stuff to consider. Maureen, do you have a weigh-in that you'd like to do too?
I guess I'm looking at the links, and I think that it's just a nice place to compile everything for the area. I do like the map. I think that's a really nice feature. And I guess that's how I feel about it. I just like that it's one place that's got all the information, and it's a centralized place for tourists to go, anybody who's local, and it could just be a nice way to advertise what we have and showcase that.
Okay, I think everybody sort of covered this. I'm in agreement with what folks have said. So with that, I guess I can actually ask if someone is willing to make a motion for us to sort of move forward, where Tina can go ahead and sort of encumber that $2,500, knowing that it's going to go towards the Artsopolis module, to sort of put this listing potential in place for public art in Marquette.
I can make the motion to approve the purchase of Artsopolis for inventory.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? No, we're all unanimous, so that's good. All right, so Tina, we got a checkbox, which is totally groovy. Okay, so I know we're cruising in on our last sort of 23.
Excuse me, do
Go
we
ahead.
want, or maybe wait till next time to put together an ad hoc? Are there two individuals that might want to assist with that?
I have no strong
I would
feelings.
definitely be interested.
Okay,
Mhm.
so Christina, Lene looks like she just waved a hand. Em, are you about to throw yourself in an ad hoc too, or are you?
I'll let those two do it. That's
Okay,
fine.
perfect. So that would be fantastic.
I mean,
Lene-
I'm happy to consult or have a conversation, just so you two know.
Wonderful. So Tina, I think it would be good at some point if you have any additional information about Artsopolis, any more extensive, whether it's further examples, literally like what are all the different kinds of fields that can, and within those fields, just how much flexibility will there be to demarcate. That would be lovely to pass on to Christina and Lene. Lene, also want to thank both of you for doing it. Lene, since you've been doing the inventory already, I think that's a beautiful segue. So thank you for being willing to step in. And Christina, thanks for just stepping in like full step, right? Like coming on the committee, you're just gonna jump right in.
I guess I haven't shared a ton of my background, but when I lived in my former community, so I moved to the UP about 2 years ago, and my former community was designated as an arts district, and that was, we were quite focused on the creative placemaking aspect of it, and just kind of, well, a lot of these similar exercises, and we never quite got this far to be able to have a nice interface to do it. It was a lot of, just PDFs and things like that. So I'm very excited.
Good. That's exactly what we need to make sure that we can not just sort of say yay, but like yay and do something, which is really critical. So we're winding down on what technically is the last 20 minutes of the meeting. And I know we're not going to get to everything, but hopefully we can get at least into a little bit of our old business so that it doesn't just keep getting shunted down the road as it is often done as we get excited about our new business. So Tina, is there a way to sort of briefly address where we are in the cultural show, just to get us up to speed, knowing that we're going to meet again, right? We're not going to, we will have future meetings.
Right. What would be helpful is I to almost have a special meeting to discuss more in depth the cultural trail. So basically, everybody, we've talked about a cultural trail. There's an Our Town grant. Again, I feel like the money is right now, of course, it could change from Michigan Council Arts and Cultural Affairs or the National Endowment for the Arts. But right now the applications are open, and we are looking at trying to find $100,000, not from just you guys, of matching funds to do to request 100,000 from the Our Town grant. We're looking at, for example, all the interpretive signage that was going to go on the Spear Dock as matching, the benches that we all waited on, that would go in as matching. Staff time. There's some other projects out in the Spear Dock, but leveraging, this would be an opportune time to leverage money from the Public Art Fund to make more money for public art. So if these monies, say they're awarded July, I believe, June or July 2021, you would have 2 years to plan what you would want to do. But, and Tracy, we didn't talk about this, but for example, if the arts gave 25, then we can get, and we received the grant, we could give 25, to public art if we were successful. Some of the grant will go to, a lot of the grant will go to interpretive signage. But it would be nice for a portion of the grant to go to public art.
Mm-hmm.
And that grant, that deadline is due July 26th. And I've been assigned by the city to work on it. They want to see money coming in. Yeah. And, so there's a lot of different moving parts here, and I get it. the Spear Dock is there. It's available for matching. It's an opportunity. And we have a division that could pull it off, but the turnaround time is quick. So that's why getting some kind of commitment from the Public Art Commission would be important to be successful with this grant ask.
So you had said that it would be valuable to have a supplemental meeting or a sort of an additional meeting to discuss this. Is it, I'm not going to ask people to sort of think about next week because that is literally 7 days from now. Would it be possible for folks to, via this kind of mechanism, meet on, say, the 24th of June to have a more thorough discussion where our focus is on the cultural trail as well as the Our Town grant, our relationship and our commitment, whatever that might be, as part of the matching to address the Our Town grant so that Tina can move forward with that money. Well, not with the money, but with the actual grant money process in order to try to sort of get that in for the July deadline.
That's a budget talk too, that maybe, it's too much to do in one night here. And we haven't met. So even though the city budget, they like, what's the public art budget? They're asking. I'm like, we haven't met for months. We haven't been allowed to meet for months. So that's a huge discussion looking at next year's budget. And we have about a little over $90,000 right now, but that's already with, that's changing fast already with the branding and Nick and public art module.
So again, I will ask folks, can y'all meet in 2 weeks? I'm good too. I don't want to force the hand of folks. Are we?
I possibly can. I might be on a podcast that night, but I might not be able to. I mean, I might be recording it that night. Okay. But if I'm not recording it that night, there are 2 other options which I put out first, and I can be there.
Okay.
Sorry, that's a bad answer.
No, that's okay. No, and Emily, we obviously want you there, but that would still allow us to have, we would still meet quorum if everybody else can make it. So why don't folks will be slated to come back and have that discussion, which will be more directly addressing the cultural trail, more extensive and deliberate discussion of budget, which will also then tie into the project backboard, which is tied to old business as well. And we can resolve more of that in the future. So if we can then sort of truck on to new business F, which is our date for the city commission presentation, which will be me tackling that. So Tina, there had been some dates that were put forward for that as possibilities. And what are those again so that we can commit to that?
Hey, Sean, if you're there listening, can you chime in? Sean's.
There's unmuting happening.
I'm sorry, I was not listening, but repeat it, I can chime in.
Basically, we were just wondering if you could remind us again or offer up for us the dates that are available for the City Commission presentation for the Marquette Public Arts Commission.
Oh, sure. So that's either going to be June 29th or July 13th.
So I know what my vote is for, which is the July 13th date, mostly because we would have had at least a couple more meetings to sort of get more things under our feet to resolve a few more issues. We might have a better discussion sort of resolved about the Our Town grant. We might have a better sort of more firmer sense of exactly what all our budget will have entailed beyond the documentation of work, beyond the branding stuff that Forrester's done, beyond the Artsopolis thing. We might actually be looking closer towards our first RFP. But if folks have a strong inclination to use that earlier date, the 29th, I'm willing to get the presentation together in time because it's not just me, right? This is, y'all need to kind of weigh in on these dates too. So
I think you should go with the date that you're comfortable with. which is July 13th, right? Yeah.
I've seen lots of nodding. So July 13th it is, right? We're now putting our stamp on that date, Sean, please.
Well,
Okay.
Linda Lowe will be ecstatic that he has the 29th.
Good. And I like making Walt happy. That's
No,
great.
you
I
won't.
will totally, I'm happy to make Walt happy. That's just lovely. Okay. We kind of skimmed over it, but before we jump into old business here, I do want to remind people that we still do have another appointment to make, another vacancy to fill on our committee. So as Tina's brought up at our back in January meeting, this is something where we can sort of bring names forward of people who might be interested. So if there are folks who you know are interested, if there are voices that you don't feel, and it does need to be it needs to be an artist of some sort, like, or like it could be a writer, a musician. It needs to be somebody who is, their work is inspired by or driven by the creative act in some way. That's the vacancy that we're filling. So if you need to go back to the public art policy, it's the position we're filling is the one that's sort of the artist position, but that can be an arts writer. It can be a critic. It can be somebody who, again, is engaged in a variety of arts making practices. And they can also be someone who has the reading of that. If I actually don't want to, let me not make something up. Let me pull it back up. Not pull up my copyright stuff right now. So if we go back to here, we're looking at the art professional part. So it is here. So there's a lot of landing space that we can look to. So artist, performing artist, architect, landscape architect, curator, arts writer, arts educator, administrator, or individual with a college level degree in an art field, right? It's big. So whether it's the kind of arts that are being currently represented by folks on our committee that you think we need to fill, let's look at that. If there are other gaps in terms of representation of voices that we feel are not present, maybe we need to take a look at that as we sort of look at inviting the next member in. Not like I feel like we don't have a good spectrum of voices, but maybe there's some that we're missing that we need to take into account. So that would be great if we can get that seat filled sooner rather than later.
Wasn't Rachel interested?
Yeah, I thought she put in an application, but I don't know.
Tina?
Since Sean, I don't know if you have access. Do you have access if there are any applications right now?
Let me take a look.
Okay.
I think Rachel Fugate put one in, but I could be wrong.
So people are invited to put in an application, and it's the city commission that decides.
Right.
I mean, other people, Bugsy Sailor might be a person. Like Amy Hamilton could be another person if we want a writer.
Who was the person that you thought applied?
Rachel Fugate.
Let me see.
So she would have applied in like February maybe or January.
Not seeing. Can you spell her last name?
Fugate.
I see that she applied to the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee and Public Art Commission last year, like probably last July, but she wasn't eligible to be a board and committee member until I think just this
February, until February. Yeah, she hadn't lived here long enough.
Yeah, so I don't know that I received another application.
Okay.
if she called me and said she wanted to apply, I could move her application through again, though.
Okay,
We only keep them on file for about 6 months.
okay. Do other people have suggestions?
Tracy, you had mentioned Judd.
I did. I was thinking both to.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Judd Sojourn.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
But I have not, like, literally in a conversation with Tina the other day, it came up, and I sent him an email about something else the other day, but I have not reached out to him. So I'm happy to do that. I just need to just sort of make that on my Thursday to-do list and say, hey, this vacancy is available. Are you interested? And his would sort of, I mean, his area of specialty is Native American studies, particularly the Anishinaabe language, but he is also a musician. So he has that sort of creative aspect, as well as he is a visual.
Paints.
He paints as well, right? So there's at least some other kind of crossover there. So I can absolutely do that about vacancy. I will do that. All right. So, folks, if y'all think of other people, please recommend that they make that application so that we can make sure all of our spots have folk who are willing to contribute in here. Okay, so on to sort of old business and our public art site selection, which we had spoken about before, looking at one of the ball court areas on the south side of Marquette and a project backboard inspired work. And so where we last left things was, if I remember right, Tina, you were checking in to find out sort of the surface information on that, like, location before we sort of moved forward and actually started drafting an RFP.
Yep, so I have I'm just grabbing it and find out where I put it. I have a report. I talked to, there's only a couple paving companies in town, and not everyone does basketball courts, so it was hard to find someone. But I found the one that had done the basketball court in Shires Hills area. There's a park up there, kind of going out of town. And basically he said that, one more roll through these papers. That they do, all the locals do asphalt. Concrete is substantially more expensive. He believes that it'd be prudent to remove and replace the asphalt. There are cracks in the asphalt, not a lot, but even if you just repair them, which would make the cost so much more minimal, he said they're still going to creep up, and it'll be about 2 years. So, you spend so much money in an artist, and the existing cracks resurface in 2 years. So he advised removing and replacing the current asphalt. The current asphalt is 4,400 square feet. And he gave an estimate cost for $16,500. Now, according to projectbackboard.com and this gentleman and Smith, another company called Smith Paving, that everyone does this acrylic surfacing, which is basically putting a plastic surfacing coat on top of asphalt to protect it from the weather. And he also said basketball courts outdoors do that because it adds a roughness a little bit to the asphalt as well. And I do have a call into the one person that does that up here called Joe's Sealer King. And online, I have up to $10,000 that costs. I'm hoping that's not the cost. So between, it could be up to $10,000, but for sure about $16,500 he felt would be safe to budget for or request in a proposal. And I'm still waiting to hear back about the sealer or the sealant. They call it acrylic resurfacing. And Project Blackboard, I noticed, does that too to prepare the site. And also the Joe Sealer King also does the markings and the lines for the basketball court. That would, be a part of their job as well. A company like that to do the lines.
So Tina, do you have a sense from the quote that you got about the remove and replace for the asphalt, what sort of lifespan then that sort of like total redo would?
15 to 20 years.
Okay, so that's a substantive kind of lifespan.
And of
Okay.
course, with our weather, maybe it's going to be in the lower end of that. And then, the art obviously would have to be retouched up during that time. Probably more maintenance with the art than the asphalt.
Okay.
But 15 years is a lot better than 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you break down those costs over that, it seems like a decent breakdown to spend like $4,000 and have something for 2 years, like versus to spend 16 to 26 and have it for maybe 20 seems like a good investment. It's hard to say.
And once they dig it up, and there's always going to be, like, he first told me that the quote that I gave you, all of you, is $3.75 a square foot. But the first time when I asked him, it was $6.50. But I think that's digging deeper into the ground. And he goes, I'm assuming the base ground is going to be fine, whatever base they put the asphalt on. He says, most likely it'll be fine, but there could be that what if.
I think
like
that's
you've got a budget that there's going to be costs you don't anticipate, like that's any project anywhere.
But also, could they give us an on-site estimate that would make us at least protect ourselves before we spend public money going forward to understand what the actual surface is? Because if we're saying, yeah, go for it, and then it ends up spending way more, double our budget, that doesn't seem very fiscally responsible, especially because this is a public arts committee.
I agree.
Okay, so an on-site estimate, and then maybe he could also then go there with someone from Public Works. No one from Public Works has a record of when that court was last resurfaced, so there is no record of that. So it's probably been over 25 or something years. So that might be helpful for him to go with city staff, and they can, poke around.
So did we initially have this in our budget, or were we kind of at the point of just trying to figure out what is a reasonable estimate first?
My sense of all of this is we were trying to figure out the hope was to do a project on that side of town. The hope was to do something that would be notably different in terms of the kind of public art that already exists in Marquette, and also do it in a location in town that has probably not really been considered for public art before. And so I think if I had to sort of summarize, all of it's been trying to figure out just what would it take to make this happen.
Gotcha.
And then once we knew that, then if it was within sort of the sense of reasonableness, I suppose, what do we do, right? Can we move forward? Can we actually sort of say, let's get that work done so it's prepped and get an RFP, and whether that means let's get the one part done so that we can do the next part. Obviously, because of COVID, a lot of stuff slowed down. It's not likely, even if we move forward with this, that we could get this thing sort of taken out, put in, prepped, painted, and like that I don't believe if we're going to get a quality product that's realistic to do. But the question is, can we encumber that money? Because I think we also need to be sensitive to the fact that while we have this money right now, we don't know what's going to happen because of COVID in terms of budgets. Obviously we hope that our budget won't be touched because it's allocated towards something really important in our community, but I don't think any of us can also take for granted the fact that that can change. So the more that we can sort of be moving forward and have a plan and show that that money, not all of it, because we need to keep some in reserve because stuff happens that you don't anticipate, maintenance on work, and so on, that if we can show that it's being used for something meaningful for the community, I think that's a good thing. So it's not just hanging out there waiting where it doesn't seem like it's doing a job. So yeah, I think Tina, if you can get that on-site thing so we can get that price pinned down even further so that we can then sort of look at that and say, all right, if this is the base, right, just to make this project possible before we even talk about the cost of commissioning, right, or putting the RFP forward to take the proposals in for an artist to come and do this, and then the money that we'd be willing to pay the maker to do this. I think that's where we kind of need to be at this point to get that number even closer to accurate, recognizing that we need to build in a buffer. I would argue a buffer of about 20% on top of whatever we get for unexpected costs, things that they didn't anticipate in order to actually do the court, right? Just to get it prepped, if that's something that we feel like we can do, given whatever it might cost, and then say, all right, then if we're good with it, which I think in concept folks are, then let's move forward and finally get that RFP drafted and like get motoring on this thing.
And I think that'll be important to do before the next presentation for the commission. Yeah.
Which might also be that as part of that hour-and-a-half meeting, that we move very quickly on to cultural trail and then project backboard, which can then be talked about in terms of the budget review, and like think about it in that order in terms of our agenda. Tina, that would be, I think, wise to sort of kind of lump them that way.
And that project would need to go before this, that RFP would need to be approved by the city commission. So that's another step.
But it's also potentially, if that's something we're thinking about, it would be nice to say, this is the kind of thing we're thinking about, right? To at least introduce them to that possibility, give them examples of what's been done, the rationales about why we're thinking about that location, that kind of work, what we expect and what we think it can do, and how it can also serve not just an arts function, but also a pragmatic function in that particular thing, because it won't stop being a basketball court, right? It will still keep doing that job at the same time. So since I know we actually can do this, I'm gonna jump actually to committee report B, since our public art inventory actually got kind of talked about with Artsopolis, unless Lene, you've got something to add. Tina, if you want to go ahead and give that sort of bit about the public art guidelines, that would be great.
So on January 16th, just a few days after we last met in January, the city attorney said that they are good to go.
So our public art guidelines are no longer a draft. So huzzah across that. I will change that to, I know I'm like, that's super stoked. Like we can sort of like, that can just sort of show up again, you know, in 6 months when we don't want to, we can sort of deal with that again. And our July meeting, we will not talk about it at our sort of interim meeting. We can sort of pick back up on the policy and maintenance documents so that we can also sort of be moving forward with that. But I want to make sure that folks, I just found out about that the other day. I was like, oh, thank gosh, that's great, right? Just to sort of also ensure that that is underway. And once now that that's done, and if we can get the policy and maintenance book done, then we can start to look at I think the artist handbook, right, can be sort of ongoing sort of bit that can now be addressed more thoroughly. So unless folks have something else, and to keep us sort of moving, because we're going to see each other in 2 weeks, anybody have good of the order? Wow, no. Steve, okay, you got a good, please. We get some good.
I mean, I guess we got another meeting, but my solo show will finally be opening July 11th at Modern Eden in San Francisco.
Congratulations.
I won't be going, but we're going to do some sort of Instagram live or something where they tour around the room and show the work. So
that's great.
When is that going to be? Do you know when that live reception is going to be?
I don't. I'm assuming it'll be either the day before or the day of, but we haven't got all the details worked out yet.
I'd love to do that event on Marquette 365 and actually attend. So send me the details.
Will do.
Okay.
Em, you unmuted. Do you have a thing?
Nope. Nothing.
Well, the only bit I have, which is just kind of an interesting project I'm working on right now, is that, and I've got to go through the first, just got back the first set of edits, which I'm going to read after this meeting, is I'm currently working on writing the scripts for a project for Foundations textbook for Oxford University Press. So that's been kind of a fun project to sort of take on that bit. I just got through writing the kind of 6 to 7 minute bit on Kara Walker. So that was a pretty fun thing to get to write. And now I get to see just what all they want me to. They're like, this looks great, but here's what we want you to change. So I have to get to look at those. Like, here's what we'd like you to change now before I start tackling the other 15 artists out of the different chapters to do. So yeah.
Is it an anthology, Tracy?
No, it's the text is one that they're about to release, which is it's a core foundations textbook, and it's looking at, I mean, like literally think for Northern classes like 80-101, right?
Yeah.
Showing back up, but trying to make sure that you integrate 2D, 3D, 4D, so like still three-dimensional and time-based work, as well as both fine art and applied arts, like all into one sort of volume. And so the textbook exists, and then they've got kind of videos that are paired with it. But they also wanted to have image walkthroughs that were done for their sort of specific contemporary artists that are sort of spotlighted in each of the chapters. And so I'd done some work. I'd done some reviewing, like literally looking over some of the chapters with some other folks. And then they asked if I was interested in doing the project. I was like, sure, why not? Let's do something like that. So yeah, it's been
That's great.
kind of a fun thing to work on, to do research. It's getting me back in, like, it's getting me into school mode without being in school. So that's been kind of cool too. But that's all I've got. Everything else is, I've been making a quilt for my parents. Like, I mean, like that's kind of my good of the order. Otherwise, I'm like focusing on those things so I don't sort of just, like curl up in despair about things. So yeah. Well, if nobody's got good, thank y'all for being and having lots of good insights and observations. I will, I've got my notes to reach out to Forrester about the branding so that we can sort of move forward with that. We'll see y'all in 2 weeks time at 6:30 so that we're good to move forward with the Our Town grant, with the more stuff on Project Backboard and the cultural trail. So that'll be our focus for that meeting. So that'll literally be where our emphasis is spent. And the one thing I did want to, so Maureen, if you'd make a note in the minutes, just to remind everybody that the officer appointments that we sort of formalized tonight are for a year. So they're 12 months, so that we will revisit that again in 12 months time to ensure that we get officers either back in place or anew. So yeah. That's what we got, folks.
Thanks.
Happy Wednesday.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks for everything, Sean, for making it go smooth.
Yes, thank you.
Sean. Go home, Sean.
Okay.